I rewatched season 1 of Arcane immediately as season 2 ended, after taking a few business weeks to recover from the emotional train wreck the second season was.
Spencer! Devon! Maria! Florence!
Although, as much as I anticipated season 2 just as everyone else for 3 whole years, there were a few shortcomings despite the overall success of the show. Let me tell you why. The reason, first and foremost, why season 1 was objectively better is because the entirety of that season was purely and entirely character driven. It was the characters and their decisions and choices that propelled a compelling plot forward, while season 2 overshadowed these character arcs with a heavily plot driven story. Season 2 sucked us into the lore so much that it didn't give enough time or spotlight on the characters. And that's why I love season 1. It stands as a groundbreaking achievement in storytelling, blending rich emotional depth, morally complex character arcs, and thematic resonance with impeccable narrative craftsmanship. Arcane transcends genre expectations and delivers a captivating story that speaks to universal themes of loss, identity, societal strife, and the destructive nature of power. And guess what? They did it much better than Game of Thrones. To say its success lied in its stunning animation is just a blatant underestimation, because the story was just as rich, layered, and carefully colored as its immaculate visuals and animation, which, to be honest, most shows these days can't stand long enough even on two legs to check at least one of the boxes Arcane succeeds in. So what made season 2 fall short that makes us realize season 1 was a perfect 3-course meal of peak fiction? Before we move on, please don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe, and click the notification bell so you don't miss any of my content in the future on analysis videos, more analysis videos, and serious analysis videos done sometimes unseriously. The first reason for Arcane's success is its layered character development and relationships. A part of Arcane's phenomenally positive reception lies in its well-rounded, multifaceted characters who evolve in meaningful, and hear me when I say believable, ways. The series takes its sweet time to explore the psychological and emotional complexities of each character, moving beyond the surface level archetypes that often plague video game adaptations. I'm looking at you, Halo TV series, because what the Every character in Arcane is presented as individuals caught in webs of personal trauma, societal expectation, and ambition. The show offers a nuanced exploration of these figures, allowing us to understand their emotions, motivations, struggles, and transformations over time. The tragic symmetry of Vi and Jinx's sibling relationship was the emotional core of the series, and it was handled with remarkable nuance. The series starts with a literal bang, a battle-torn bridge, a dystopian wasteland, and two sisters experiencing the same devastating loss within the first minute. Both Vi and Jinx have an almost identical reaction to seeing their loved one dead on the scene, showing us the bond and shared emotional scar these two characters have. Arcane establishes this before the intro even starts, and what does the entire story explore after that? The great grand rift between these characters that we are already rooted for. Their bond is deeply shaped by shared history and emotional scars, and the writing crafts their dynamic with such empathy that even when they are at split odds, the viewer is somehow forced to understand both perspectives. Season 2, however, drops the ball on this front and kind of takes away the focus off of these characters, and it leaves too little time to explore the drastic transformations they undergo again this time. The other supporting characters share the same pitfall. Caitlyn's arc was parked in the narrative background like a forgotten subplot. Victor's transformation ignored most of the time. Jay's simply forgotten of existence. And so were Mel, Echo, and Heimerdinger, just poofed off into another damned realm in the multiverse. And you'd think sidelining half the cast would mean more time for Vi and Jinx's arcs to shine, but No, even that falls short. Why didn't it work out? We watched an entire season of Jinx fighting against her inner demons, struggling to accept Vi back in her life and reconcile her love for her sister with her new identity. And the first act of season 2 was going quite well. They were at opposite ends, tearing each other's hair apart like literal sisters, only for them to patch things up faster than you can say trauma bond by episode 4. Like, what did I miss? Did they hold hands, sing Kumbaya, and magically forget the years of heartbreak? It felt way too quick and cheapened the emotional weight of their relationship. Sure, Vanda showed up, and that's what caused the family reunion, but it was a neglected, not missed opportunity to show the development of the sisters' gradual reconciliation. The after effects on Jinx of Vanda coming back felt too underwhelming. We never saw how she processed the feelings of seeing a dead family member alive after so long, whose death she felt responsible for her entire life. That's prime emotional turmoil, and the writers just skimmed over it. Instead, we get Vi's goth emo spiral into drinking and underground wrestling. A mood, sure, but not nearly enough to convey the depth of her grief and guilt. Like, yeah, we get it, that's how bad the breakup was, but this is all we get to see of it. Vi went through more than enough trauma, literally, and we deserve to see more of how she was coping with the pain and anguish caused by every single person she held dear, every single person who all left. Vanda's reappearance should have been an emotional grenade, but instead it barely felt a ripple. One could also suspect that it didn't work out since his reappearance had been one of the most popular theories in the fandom, so the anticipation didn't quite give the effect as it intended. Act 2 of the second season could have well been an entire season, and it would have worked way too perfectly, but this is where I began to feel the series was hitting the accelerator pedal a little too hard, and that's on narrative structure and pacing. Something season 1 excelled in is the way their filler episodes were constructed. Actually, you can't call them filler because season 1 used every precious second to convey information that cohesively added up to the characters' journeys and motivations. Season 2 felt like it showed up to the party unprepared, or maybe a little overprepared. Pacing was a seesaw of sluggish exposition and frenzied action. Don't get me wrong, the action and fight scenes were phenomenal, but it shouldn't have had to overshadow the other crucial building blocks that carried this show. Act 1 is probably the best segment of season 2 in terms of good pacing. It wasn't the best, but it was the least worst. Act 2 was a time skip slingshot into events that made you go, what the heck's just happened? And Act 3 patched those questions up the best it could. The pacing of season 1 was deliberate and unhurried, but never sluggish. It took its time setting up the stakes and letting us live in the world of Piltover and Zaun. When it needed to hit the gas, it did so with thrilling efficiency. Both season 1 and season 2 had their respective time skips in their second acts, but what made us think if we missed something watching Act 2 of Season 2? Season 1 worked because foreshadowing and emotional setup was gradually built. Powder's devastating turn of events and the destruction of her family made a dramatic rupture that set the stage for a time skip. When we reunite with these characters, their transformations feel like a logical evolution of what we've seen. Powder is now Jinx, traumatized and dangerous, while Vi emerges as a hardened fighter. The emotional thorough lines carry seamlessly, making us believe in the years we didn't see. Season 2's time skip feels arbitrary compared to Season 1. Act 1 ends on a relatively subdued note with unresolved tensions, but instead of building on those directly, Act 2 feels like we skipped several chapters. Like, how did Jinx and Vi go from estranged siblings to a shaky detente in what seems like no time at all? It feels rushed and emotionally unearned. Season 1 built momentum. The time skip does not disrupt the flow, it amplifies it. The stakes escalate naturally as we move from a tale of familial bonds to one of systematic power struggles. Each new revelation in the post-time skip era builds on the emotional weight of the first act, making the transition feel earned. Meanwhile, in Season 2, key developments like the shifts in power dynamics or characters' new roles are dropped on us without much context. Vi is suddenly in a downward spiral, Jinx has reappeared with seemingly less inner turmoil than before, and several other characters are just missing. The lack of breadcrumbs leaves viewers scrambling to connect dots that aren't even on the same page. The third fail in pacing, however, is the exposition overload. This is important. Instead of info dumping, Season 1 uses clever storytelling to reveal what happened during the gap. Subtle details like Jinx's obsession with her sister, Vi's imprisonment, Jace's elevated status organically weave the history into the present. It's show don't tell at its finest, letting the audience piece together the puzzle without feeling lost. And in season 2, instead of letting us discover what happened during the gap organically, it relies heavily on clunky exposition. Characters casually mention major events as if we were all at the same off-screen party, making it hard to feel the weight of what's been skipped. It's like reading the cliff notes of a story instead of experiencing it firsthand. The time skip could have been used to show significant growth or regression in the characters. Instead, it feels like a plot device to fast forward through unresolved arcs. The emotional fallout of Jinx seeing Vanda alive again? Barely addressed. Vi's descent into self-destructive behavior? Glimpsed but never explored in depth. Caitlyn, or should I say Caitlyn? These are gold mines of character development that were skimmed over, leaving the time skip feeling like a narrative shortcut. The key difference lies in preparation and execution. Season 1's time skip was the natural consequence of its first act's climactic events, while Season 2's felt like a narrative band-aid slapped over an incomplete arc. It didn't just gloss over key developments, it undermined the emotional stakes that made the first season so compelling. In short, Season 1's time skip said, here's how we've grown, let's keep climbing. Season 2's time skip said, you didn't need to see that, trust us, it was dramatic. Anyway, moving on. One invites you deeper into the story while the other leaves you scratching your head. Speaking of which, Season 1 made me scratch my head a lot, but in a good way. It made me comprehend and contemplate about the story, and Season 2 just kept me busy connecting the dots half the time. However, Season 2 explores the themes of power, corruption, and society just as Season 1, except it felt out of balance and out of focus. Let me explain. Movies or even shows rarely carry even a grain of intellectual weight Arcane is embedded with. This series tackles themes of power, corruption, and societal inequality authentically, rarely witnessed. Arcane was a TED Talk with visuals. This socio-political commentary is threaded into the narrative in a way that never feels forced. Instead, giving a voice to characters from both sides of the class divide and allowing the viewer to see the complex, often conflicting perspectives that emerge from these worlds. Season 1 was crafted with a single unifying theme: division and inequality. The divide between Piltover and Zaun is ever present, manifesting in every plotline and character arc. This isn't just a tale of sibling rivalry or political intrigue, it's an exploration of systematic inequality and the human cost of progress. Vanda's efforts to shield Zaun's people, Jinx's unraveling as a victim of its chaos, and Jace's moral gymnastics over Hextech all tie back to this central theme. Even Victor's story felt like a heartfelt footnote to the broader societal commentary. His arc wasn't just about science and ambition, it was a poetic metaphor for Zaun's grit and desperation. His slow descent into moral grayness wasn't just tragic, it was inevitable in a world where progress always has a price tag. If you missed that subtext, don't worry, the writers were busy hitting you over the head with it, in the best way possible. Season 2 broadens its thematic canvas, introducing geopolitical tensions, questions of power and responsibility, and explorations of legacy. These are intriguing ideas, but the show does not weave them into a unified narrative. Instead, they feel like separate threads that occasionally intersect but never form a cohesive tapestry. There was a thematic overload, or you could say there were too many cooks in the kitchen. Season 2 cooked, but the food was served burnt. Season 2 decided that one theme wasn't enough. No, it needed to be about geopolitics, power dynamics, legacy, trauma, and moral responsibility. The result? A buffet where nothing complemented anything else. Sure, it was ambitious, but ambition does not always equal cohesion. The main example, the tensions between Piltover and Noxus were introduced but felt like an afterthought. While interesting in theory, these threads distracted from the Piltover-Zaun conflict. This was the thematic core that made Season 1 memorable. And why? Personal and political parallels. Season 1 pulled off the ultimate narrative magic trick, blending the intimate with the grand. Jinx and Vi's fractured bond wasn't just sibling drama, it was the story of Piltover and Zaun in miniature. Their estrangement mirrored the larger societal divide, and every scene between them felt like a heartbreaking thesis statement on how cycles of violence and mistrust perpetuate systematic issues. In Season 1, every character arc fed into the themes. In Season 2, they might as well have been running on separate tracks. Caitlyn was once the moral compass of Piltover. Now that compass was broken and discarded away into the void. Victor's philosophical quandaries ghosted. The arcs felt rushed with emotional beats that felt more like a shrug than a slap. clear themes in 4K Ultra HD. Every frame of season 1 screamed, pay attention to the metaphor. Piltover's gleaming, orderly skyline versus Zaun's grimy, chaotic sprawl. That's thematic gold. Even the color palettes weren't subtle. Piltover's golds and blues practically shouted privilege, while Zaun's green hues whispered toxicity and decay. The blue of Hextech versus the pink of Shimmer, the blue and the pink, the gold and the green, and Jinx's hallucinations, not just trippy animation, they were her trauma in high definition. Season 1 didn't just show you its themes, it painted them in neon lights. Season 2, it felt like someone dimmed the switch. The stark contrasts between Piltover and Zaun, barely noticeable. Jinx's mental breakdowns toned down to the point of feeling generic. Even the visuals surrounding Vanda's return, a moment ripe for thematic exploration, felt oddly muted. Consequences were serious. Every decision made in season 1 mattered. Jace's choice to militarize Hextech wasn't just a plot point, it was a gut punch that echoed the themes of power and its misuse. Jinx's actions didn't just fracture her bond with Vi, they symbolized the larger societal breakdown. It's like the writers were determined to make sure nothing, and I mean nothing, happened without a purpose. Season 2 wanted to talk about power and reconciliation, but it didn't commit. The messages were everywhere, confusing, and were delivered weakly. Vi and Jinx's reunion, for example, could have been a thematic goldmine about trauma and forgiveness. Instead, it felt like, oh hey, let's patch things up in episode 4 and move on. The stakes and emotional weight were undercooked, leaving the themes floundering like a half-planned group project. Season 1 didn't just stick the thematic landing, it nailed the dismount, spun 3 times in the air, and landed in a superhero pose. Everything from the characters to the setting to the visuals served its core message, creating a story that felt both intimate and universal. Season 2, while not without its moments, felt like a scattershot attempt to expand the series' thematic scope. It's like the writers were trying to build on the foundation of season 1 but forgot to bring the blueprint. The result? A season that was ambitious but ultimately uneven. The series hints at themes of forgiveness and reconciliation but rushes through the emotional groundwork needed to make these moments impactful, and that made the thematic weight of these ideas feel superficial compared to season 1's deeper exploration of its core themes. So, again, why did season 1 work and why did season 2 fall short? Compelling character-driven narrative. Every major plot point was rooted in character decisions and growth, making the story emotionally resonant and compelling. Thematic cohesion. Unified themes of division, inequality, and systematic injustice were explored through every subplot and parallel to the characters' arcs, creating a seamless narrative. Balanced narrative structure and pacing, allowing emotional stakes to build organically with no filler episodes wasting time. But this isn't to say season 2 was that bad, though I might have made it seem that way. Season 2 was definitely worth the wait and arrived bigger, bolder, grander, and more epic. I feel like season 2 was made for the fans of the lore, and season 1 was the creators hooking in new audiences and setting the stage for season 2. Regardless, Arcane still stands as one of the best animated stories out there, dare I say in history. A nearly flawless masterpiece in storytelling that writers and filmmakers alike can benefit studying from. There is so much to dissect and talk about this show individually, but more on that in later videos, where I plan to analyze the psychology and dissect the layers of all these characters because they are worth talking about, especially characters like Silco, Ambessa, Caitlyn, Mother, I mean Mel, and Victor. Until then, I'm replaying episode 7 because personally the season ends there for me, and since Netflix won't be paying for my therapy, I refuse to accept any other endings. Thank you very much.